So as Gilbert was saying, Anson Resources is an ASX-listed company with a project in Utah, USA. So it's in the state of Utah. And if you look at the state of Utah down in the bottom corner, there is an area called the Paradox Formation, which has been an oil and gas exploration and producing area since the 50s. We have two projects in that area, the Paradox, which is near Moab, and Green River, which is near Green River. The key thing about this project is it's in the United States. In the United States, they're keen to produce their own battery minerals. And as a project in the United States, we can get access to cheap government loans. But also any vehicles that use lithium from a US mine will get a subsidy of $3,500 for the consumer. Our project is also green lithium. We are using a new technology called direct lithium extraction, and it uses much less water and produces much less CO2. It's much better for the environment. And that technology, whilst cutting edge, we are using commercially proven technology. And that technology is from a Chinese company called Sunresin. As Gilbert said, we've already completed our DFS and the project economics are very strong. We have an NPV of $1.3 billion. Our growth prospects are really excellent. This project is starting with 10,000 tons per annum of lithium being produced. But we have a resource of 1 million tons, and that means we can produce for 100 years. Or we can increase our production, and we plan to increase our production. And there are other minerals present in the brine, such as bromine and boron, that we can also produce. We also have an exploration target of another 4 million tons, which would take our total available lithium to 5 million tons. That is a huge growth opportunity. So where are we at in terms of being ready for production? We're currently in commercial negotiations with light vehicle manufacturers in the United States, and we're in a qualification period. We have our own lithium demonstration plant producing lithium carbonate, and we've provided that to OEMs and battery manufacturers so they can do testing. In terms of approvals, we are well advanced. We have at least 50% of our approvals, and we expect to get almost all of our approvals by the end of this year. And one of the reasons is approvals in the United States are quite difficult for mining projects, and that's because most mining projects are on federal land. It's very hard to get federal permits, but our project is only on state and private land, which means we can move much faster through the permitting process. We completed our DFS last year in August, and we're currently in the FEED. So that will give us plus or minus 10% cost and make it possible for banks to support us. In terms of financing, we've been speaking with investors, banks, banking syndicates, export credit agencies, the Department of Energy, and other US government organizations to fund us. And we're well progressed in those discussions. This is a quick diagram to show you how our project would operate. The brine is about 2 kilometers beneath the earth in several reservoirs. It's under pressure, so it comes up itself without being needed to pump. In fact, there's so much energy, we can create hydropower. Here we extract the lithium, and then the lithium-depleted brine is put back into the earth. We draw the water from the Colorado River. We recycle 80% of that, and we produce inside our facility battery-ready lithium carbonate. This technology is very cutting edge. The brine comes into a chamber where there's a resin. That resin attracts the lithium to it. Then once the resin is saturated, we remove the brine, and then we wash the lithium off with water before we remove any remaining trace elements of things like magnesium and boron that we don't want. And then we turn it into a solid. At the moment, direct lithium extraction is considered a very cutting-edge technology. However, there are already several projects underway. Livent has been producing using DLE for about 20 years, and the Chinese company Sunresin has been producing lithium carbonate in China at several projects since 2018, and that's a technology we intend to use. Sunresin, as I mentioned, it's a Chinese company. It's listed on the Shenzhen Stock Exchange. It's a major player in resin separation technologies. It would be one of the top 3 companies in the world, and they work in water processing, food processing, and metal separation. The metal separation that they use includes lithium, but also nickel and others. They are also a major supplier to the pharmaceutical industry, and Lilly in the United States is one of their major customers. What we like about them is they started first commercial production of DLE in China in 2018. They now have 7 projects producing 32,000 tons of lithium carbonate each year, and we've been working with them since 2019. The resin that they have lasts 10 years, which is very good for our operating costs. This is a snapshot of our company and our share price performance. To note, one of our largest shareholder is a Singaporean investor, Chai Xingye International, and our market cap is just under $200 million. These are some of the key people in our project. Bruce Richardson, our CEO, he spent 15 years in China, but he's also been in the resources sector for 15 years. And Greg Knox, who is our key geologist, who is responsible for identifying this great asset that we have. So this is the summary of the financial performance of our DFS. It has a great internal rate of return of 47%, and the NPV is $1.3 billion, and it requires a capex of approximately $500 million with a payback period of 2 years. That payback period is important because once we have paid back all loans for the project, that means that we can start our expansion, and we would add another 20,000 tons when we reach that point and become a 30,000 ton per annum producer of lithium carbonate. Our operating costs at just over $4,000 per ton puts us in the bottom of the second quartile of producers of lithium. However, if we look more closely at our operating costs, we have one item here, well disposal fee, which is approximately $1,200 dollars per ton. And we expect that we won't be required to pay that because that is something that's designed for the oil and gas industry, and we are in the business of extracting brine. If that's the case and we don't have to pay that, then our costs will be in the first quartile. We'll be one of the lowest cost producers of lithium carbonate. We expect to have 60% of our project funded by debt and 40% by equity. And then there's our second project in Green River. It's in the same geological formation. And what we love about our Green River project is the great infrastructure. And this is our own private land where we can put our plant. It's close to 250 meters from a river that we have the rights to the water from. And it's 750 meters from a rail line. This is a major interstate highway. We have power lines that go across the property. We own the mineral rights as well, so we can draw the brine on our own land and we can re-inject it on our own land. And this is very important for permitting. It makes it much easier to permit. We're also in an industrial area that was previously used for other industry, and that means that we get expedited permitting. And we are inside the township of Green River. which means we don't have to build a camp for our workers. They can live in the town. And we also get access to town water and town sewerage. So that's the end of my presentation. Very happy to take any questions.
Hi, Tim. Thank you for your presentations. We have collected a few questions from the investors last few days already. So we have a few here on my hand. The first one, let me address. The first question from the audience is, what would be the major risk for your Paradox Lithium project now in becoming a producing mine?
I think the key risk for us, usually a project of this scale, going from greenfields to producing infrastructure would be your biggest concern. But as I showed in that last slide, our infrastructure risk is really low. So that's one where you can tick a box and say, we don't have to worry about that as much as other projects. I think for us, it's technology. DLE is very cutting edge, and a lot of investors and bankers are not yet comfortable with DLE in general as a technology. But our answer to that is we're working with a technology supplier that is already in commercial production. And so that has significantly reduced that risk.
So the second question is sort of the follow-up for that. One of the investors asking, what's the significance of partnering with Sunresin? Has what other, you said, commercially proven? So what other projects have their technology being deployed currently?
So most of their technology has been deployed in the province of Qinghai, in the salt lakes of Qinghai. And there they have 4 projects, and they work with major Chinese corporations like Minmetals, but also with private companies, or Zhangge, which is a listed company on the Shenzhen Stock Exchange, Jingtai, and one other. So what we see there is that the Qinghai area has been experimenting with direct lithium extraction technology for some time. They've used filtration methods, they've used chemical separation, and then they started working with Sunresin on using resin separation technologies. And Sunresin put in their first plant in 2018 in Qinghai. And when they started to produce, it wasn't battery grade, it was industrial grade lithium because they had too much boron. And so they put in a boron extraction train, which used their unique ion separation technology for boron. And with that, they're able to produce battery grade lithium. And that was completed in 2019. So they've really been operating now for 5 years at 4 separate locations. So that's why Sunresin is such a great partner. And they're not a group of scientists. This is a commercial operation of enormous scale. It's one of the top 3 resin manufacturers in the world.
And the third question from another investor, maybe you can elaborate more about one of your major shareholders that I see here called Chiatai Xinye International.
Sure. So that is actually a Chinese national based out of Shanghai. He has been a very strong supporter of us throughout the development of our project. He's never sold 1 share, and we really appreciate his support and advice to our project.
Okay. Next question is that what's the upcoming milestone later this year or next year that investors should look for?
So I think the key items are the offtake agreements. We are currently speaking with a range of light vehicle manufacturers, battery manufacturers, and battery component manufacturers and trading companies. I spent last week in Tokyo. I met with all the major battery companies, and we've done the same in the US. And I think that's going to be a major step forward for us. The other thing to look for is the final permitting of our project, which we expect towards the end of this year.
And this is the final question that we've collected. This is asking about, in general, do you find on the Australian market, capital market, compared to North American capital market, or if you know or not, do they have for the lithium space, it seems like it has a higher valuation these days compared to what the counterpart or the peers in North America. Seems like it. You have anything to comment on it? Is it better or worse for you?
Right. So the Australian stock market is a great place for junior miners like us. We have a lot of investors who really understand our projects well. Most investors and banks, when you go to speak to them, the people you're speaking to that are making the decisions are mining engineers and chemical engineers. So they really understand that space. It's a great conversation you have with them. The US market for mining projects is not necessarily as sophisticated. Canada obviously is quite similar to Australia, and many of the major lithium projects under development are dual listed in the US or Canada and Australia. So shareholders can choose to invest via the US or the Australian listing of that company. Our plan is to raise the capital for this project using our Australian listing, but encouraging US investors to invest in that. And we have very close relationships with the major institutional investors in Australia and the United States. We're regularly marketing to them. But I expect that our future is a NASDAQ listing, and that's simply because it's mainly a US project. And once we get into production, then we'd get a better valuation in the United States.
That's a great insight to share. Thank you, Tim, for your time, for answering all the questions from the audience, from the investors today.
Thanks very much, Gilbert. Really appreciate the opportunity.